With Paul George joining forces in Philly and Karl-Anthony Towns transforming New York, the race to dethrone the Celtics is heating up. But which star will be Boston's biggest threat this season? The Eastern Conference is gearing up for an absolute dogfight this season, and at the top of the pile are the reigning champions, the Boston Celtics, sitting comfortably in the driver's seat. But Celtics fans, let me be clear. You'd better not get too comfortable. Why? Because the New York Knicks and the Philadelphia 76ers have been busy this offseason, treating their rosters like they're hitting the gym in preparation for a class reunion. They're upgrading, refining, and coming back stronger like someone trying to impress their ex by getting in the best shape of their life. And when I say they've made moves, I mean big moves. Starting with the Knicks, they didn't just tweak around the edges, no. They swung for the fences by adding none other than Karl-Anthony Towns, a game-changing acquisition. A big man who could shoot from beyond the arc? Sign me up. The Knicks haven't had a floor spacer of his caliber in years. Not only does he bring shooting, but Towns also possesses that invaluable versatility that makes him an absolute nightmare to game plan against. Cat, as he's affectionately known, can stretch defenses like few other big men in the league, forcing opposing centers out of the paint and opening up driving lanes for the rest of the Knicks roster. But let's not pigeonhole him as a sharpshooter. Towns is a versatile threat who can put the ball on the floor, score in the post, and facilitate for others. After spending years in the basketball wilderness of Minnesota, he has something to prove, and he's hungry for success. But Towns isn't coming into a bare cupboard. The Knicks already boast a sturdy and well-rounded starting five. Jalen Brunson, their floor general at point guard, was a revelation last season, proving that his breakout wasn't just a flash in the pan. R.J. Barrett, the former number 3 overall pick, is maturing into a well-rounded scorer and defender. Julius Randle, for all his ups and downs, can still put up 20 points and 10 rebounds on a nightly basis. And now, with Towns in the fold, the Knicks have a dynamic front court capable of dominating in a variety of ways. Towns is the piece they've been missing, someone who can elevate their offensive ceiling and make them more than just a scrappy playoff team. His addition is the type of move that signals the Knicks aren't satisfied with just making the playoffs anymore. They want to contend. And while the Knicks made a splash, let's not forget about the Philadelphia 76ers. It wasn't enough for them to ride the Joel Embiid train. They decided to add Paul George into the mix. That's right, the Sixers acquired PG-13, one of the most talented two-way players in the league. If you're a Sixers fan, this move has to have you dreaming of parades down Broad Street, adding George to a core that already includes the reigning MVP Joel Embiid. That makes the Sixers a legitimate force to be reckoned with. Paul George isn't just another all-star. He's a player who can impact the game on both ends of the floor. He's a scorer, a playmaker, and perhaps most importantly, an elite defender who can lock down the opposing team's best wing. Imagine being an opposing coach trying to figure out how to stop this team. You've got to deal with Embiid, who is arguably the most dominant big man in the league, and now George, who can drop 30 points on any given night, while also guarding the other team's best scorer. So there are already whispers circulating, and by whispers I mean heated debates on Twitter, that the Knicks may now have the best starting five in the Eastern Conference. And when you look at their roster, it's easy to see why. In terms of balance, cohesion, and chemistry, they're in a great spot. Brunson has quickly become one of the league's most dependable point guards. Barrett is blossoming into the player Knicks fans hoped he would be. And Randle, despite his inconsistencies, is still a reliable double-double machine. Add Cat into the mix, and suddenly you've got a team that doesn't just want to make noise in the playoffs, they want to make a run in the finals. But once again, before the Knicks start planning the championship parade route, you have the counterpoint of the Sixers, who might just have the edge when it comes to sheer star power. A duo of Embiid and George is downright terrifying. Embiid is coming off an MVP season where he was nothing short of dominant, and it's clear he's on a mission to prove that last year was no fluke and was the most capable offensive facilitators in the game. And Paul George? He's the ultimate X factor. He's the guy who can hit big shots when you need them and lock down the opposing team's score when the game is on the line. That kind of versatility is invaluable in the playoffs. So, the debate boils down to this. Are you a believer in depth and balance, or do you side with star power? The Knicks' starting five might be the most complete in the East, but do they have a player who can take over the game in crunch time like Joel Embiid? Can Karl-Anthony Towns be the dominant postseason performer the Knicks need him to be? These are the kind of questions that will determine how far this team can go. Now on the flip side, the 76ers. While possessing arguably the flashiest trio in the East, come with their own set of concerns. Health, for one, is a huge question. Paul George, as talented as he is, has struggled to stay on the floor consistently throughout his career, and while Embiid was relatively healthy last season, his history of injuries is well documented. Then that leaves Tyrese Maxey to carry the load again if the health becomes an issue. But if, and it's a big if those two can stay healthy and clicking, the Sixers may have the firepower to dethrone the Celtics. Speaking of the Celtics, dethroning Boston is no small task. They're loaded with their own stars playing elite defense and have more playoff experience than both the Knicks and the Sixers combined. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown form one of the best duos in the league, and their supporting cast is as deep as it is talented. But if anyone's going to knock them off, it will come down to which team can impose their style of play and survive the grind of a long playoff series. One thing's for sure, between the newly reloaded Knicks and Sixers, the Eastern Conference is shaping up to be in an absolute slugfest. Let's be real for a moment. When you look at the Knicks and the Sixers, you're looking at two teams on the verge of something big. But just how big is the equation? For the Sixers, it starts and ends with Joel Embiid, the reigning MVP who is quite literally the biggest individual mismatch in the conference. He can drop 40 points, grab 15 rebounds and block shots, all while barely breaking a sweat. When Embiid is on, he's a walking mismatch. If you're a Knicks fan, the thought of him rumbling down the lane and steamrolling into the paint probably keeps you up at night. But here's where it gets fun. The Knicks aren't just a one-man show. They've quietly built one of the most balanced and complete rosters in the league, and that makes them dangerous. Yes, Embiid will get his points, but New York is coming into this season with a level of wing depth that could genuinely tilt the scales in their favor. Picture Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby, two of the best defenders in the league, swarming Tyrese Maxey and Paul George during crunch time. You can almost see the beads of sweat forming on George's forehead from here. And we can't forget about Jalen Brunson. Last season, he proved that he's not just some sidekick, he's a full-fledged star. Brunson averaged over 32 points per game in the postseason. That's not just a stat line, that's a give me the ball and get out of my way kind of player. He was this close to dragging the Knicks to the Eastern Conference Finals last season. Now, you give that man a little help in the form of Karl-Anthony Towns, and suddenly the Knicks aren't just scrappy, they're lethal. Karl-Anthony Towns might just be the piece that takes New York from playoff pretenders to serious contenders. Cat is coming off a deep playoff run himself, and his ability to stretch the floor is exactly what Brunson and the rest of the Knicks need. A consistent number two option. That's been the missing ingredient for years. Now that they have it, add in Towns' conference finals experience, which will bring a calming presence when things get tight in the playoffs. And this Knicks team is looking more legit by the day. But we can't ignore the elephant in the room, health. This is where things get dicey for Philly. Embiid is a force of nature, but he's also one loose shoelace away from missing significant time during the playoffs. As for Paul George, let's just say his injury history doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Betting on both of them to make it through an 82-game season plus the playoffs, you would have better odds betting on Ben Simmons to hit a three-pointer. So hit that like button, subscribe, share, and in the comments, tell us if you think there's another team out there that could give Boston a run for its money.